Hey, how are you, Brian?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. I just love those days and can't wait to talk about them.
Excellent. Now, Bobby, tell everybody where you are right now. What state are you in? What city?
I'm in Los Angeles, California today. I'm sitting here in a place, and it's been incredible weather here, playing weather, and you don't sweat out here when you play anymore. So it's a blessing. I sweated enough and cramped enough and had enough IVs for a lifetime in the '80s. So I'm
There you
still
go.
appreciative of not having to switch shirts 9 times, 6 Gatorades, an IV, and maybe a victory.
Let's get your thoughts on the Orange Bowl yesterday. I think you saw that post. You probably disappointed. Give us your feedback there.
Well, I kind of responded, and I'm very non-political, so I never try to ever post anything that's related to my opinions. I mean, obviously, been in the media business for 15 years and try never to become the story. I want to report the story. But I had to say something yesterday because for these kids to be pulled off the court at 89 degrees with a breeze, and it just didn't seem right to me when, we're playing designated in Hialeah in May, and we're playing in Delray Beach in this, even in the spring when it's 95 degrees, 90% humidity. I just think that's part of the sport is, when Nadal's playing Djokovic in the fifth set at the Australian Open and it's 95 degrees, they don't say, hey, guys, unless it's really just past the threshold of dangerous. Part of the sport is competing competitively in the midst of conditions that are unfavorable to both. And it really brings out the intangibles that you don't really know are going to go into a match until you get into that match. And that's what creates experience. And for the kids that worked the hardest and trained the hardest and ran the hardest and got in the best shape, they had the advantage back in Florida.
Right.
And yesterday, the weather is not a variable for who's going to be the victor, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I concur. I feel like I think it's just society in general, and this is just another example of what are we worried about? I mean, these kids they're old enough to handle those elements and real adversity that's going to hit them in their lives. Um,
And I
all right,
remember,
go
I
ahead.
remember a player that, for example, didn't really sweat very much. He reminded me of Aaron Crickstein, one of my all-time favorite players, Mark Urbanacek, and he could play for hours and hours, and it just felt like he never got tired. And I felt like that was a variable for him that gave him the advantage in big matches that went in 3 sets, especially during the summertime and the Nationals and other places. And if he would have been pulled off the court at 89 degrees, I felt like we would have lost an advantage for a victory.
Sure. No, I agree with that. Absolutely. All right, Bobby, let's start with your birthplace, which is in Orlando.
Actually, I was born in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, Fort
Is
Lauderdale. Okay, I have that wrong. Excuse me. Okay, but you grew up most of your before going to Bolletary in
Yeah.
Orlando. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I grew up in Orlando in College Park.
Okay.
My parents moved there when we were when I was 5 years old. And I hit my first tennis ball at the Orlando Tennis Center downtown.
Yeah.
My first coach was Jim Kelleher, who's now a terrific lawyer in town. And yeah, he saw some ambition, probably not a lot of talent, but he said, if you're willing to try this hard and work this hard, I'm willing to help you. And my mom probably had $30 to her name, and she paid the first $30, and that was the last $30 he ever accepted. And that was a tennis clinic that ran, I think, 6 weeks in the summer of 1975. I would have been about 10 years old, kind of a late starter, but because I played my first tournament till the fall of the second year 12s.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you were a late starter. Yeah.
Kelleher was my first coach.
Okay. So at what age? We'll skip a little bit so we can get into some really interesting stuff, especially at Bolletary. At what age do you make that journey southwest to Bradenton?
Well, it was Labor Day, 1980,
Okay.
and I was 15 years old. And, unfortunately, my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she was dying, unfortunately. My dad was a painter by trade. He painted and renovated houses, so he was constantly in and out of work. And Kerry Cohenauer, who's one of the all-time great players in Florida history, his parents had, some success, and they owned a carpet company, and they had gone to Nick one day and said, there's this kid in Orlando that's ranked about 20 in the state, but he's ranked 20th, and he's only been playing a couple of years. And I think he could be the number one player in the nation in 2 or 3 years if he was given the right environment. And they went to bat for me and, kind of asked Nick to give me a tryout at the Colony. So I went over there in July of '80. I hit for about 5 minutes, and Nick said, full scholarship, you're in.
Wow.
And my mom dropped me off there on Labor Day, literally Labor Day of 1980. And believe it or not, I went from 20th in the state, and within 10 months, I was the Florida State junior champion, boys 16s. Unbelievable.
So you're about 15, 16 years old, a freshman in high school. Do I have that right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. So the Colony is not in Bradenton. This is the Sarasota venue. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, that's where Nick started with, the Clobbers over there, who unfortunately Murph Clobber just recently passed away, the owner of the Colony, but he gave Nick his first shot at an academy there, and Carling Bassett was the first student.
Yep.
And then, the DePalmer family and Jimmy Arias, and then Aaron Crickstein and others. But we were the first round of kids. Pablo Araya was there before me, but
Wow.
you had a really incredible group of kids there in the late 70s. And by 1980, there were 100 kids from around the world. And it was the best training grounds of my dream life. I mean, I would go back there and do it tomorrow. And if I could we would wake up at 6:15 in the morning. We would have till 6:30 to get to breakfast. We had to be on the school bus at 5 minutes to 7. We would get to school at 7:10, be in school by 7:15. We get picked up at 11 o'clock in the morning. We'd have lunch at 11:15, 11:20. We'd be on the court stretching at 12 o'clock, and we would be playing by 12:30 till 6. We would do conditioning till 6:45. We would have dinner at 7 to 7:30. We would have a study hall from 7:45 to 9:30. No talking, no speaking, zero. And from 9:30 to 10, we'd sit by the pool and chit chat and have our social. And at 10:30, the lights were out with security going around making sure that we were in bed and not talking. And that was my life throughout my entire high school days. And it was the greatest days of my life.
Wow. That is fascinating. That's a legitimate schedule right there. Now, your thoughts on the Showtime special of Nick Bollettieri?
I was disappointed.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, it's interesting because Nick is about winning, and Nick Bollettieri is on the forward of my book. He wrote the forward.
Yep.
Nick has been by my side since I've been that little 15-year-old kid, 5'9", 135 pounds, a nobody. And he showed up at the U.S. Open for the press conference with Billie Jean King. He showed up to the book signing with Billie Jean and LZ Granderson and ESPN. And he has been by my side my whole life. But I will tell you this. I played Aaron Crickstein. I write about this, and Nick and I joke about it. And he says, Bobby, I had to go with who I thought the winner was.
Yeah.
I'm playing Aaron Crickstein in the finals of the National Boys Junior 18 clay courts in Louisville, Kentucky. And if I win the match, I'm the number one junior in the United States. If I lose the match, I'm number 3 or 4. Well, I'm playing Crickstein, and, we can talk about the dramatics of that match when we talk about the book, but Nick is sitting with Dr. Crickstein up in the stands and cheering for Aaron Crickstein, and I was his son. I was Nick's bona fide son, first son out of not being a blood son. And he chose to cheer and root for Aaron Crickstein at the finals of the national championships against me.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks later, Aaron's beating Vita Scarlaitis, number 4 in the world on USA Network. I'm sitting in my dorm room going, what's going on?
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that happened with Courier and Agassi. I'm not surprised there's been some choices made. But, quite frankly and quite honestly, that's life. Life is tough.
Yeah.
And you're in the movie business, or you're in the acting business, you're in the lawyer business, you're in the real estate, whatever business you're in, people are going to make choices, and they're always going to choose who they believe that can get them the furthest, fastest, in the best way, in the most correct way, of course, but we have to make choices. Nick made a lot of choices that hurt a lot of people,
Sure.
but choices also made him who he became, which allowed him to be able to give more scholarships and help more kids and change more lives. Because Andre went on to be Andre, more kids could go to the Voluntary Academy on scholarship because there were resources and financial things that were beneficial to now Nick, that he could now help more kids. So I'm a beneficiary of his hard choices because Nick became who Nick became, and his influence changed my life forever.
One of the most fascinating stories in your book, I think, was the 18s finals at Louisville, and we'll dive into that as we get closer. The adversity that you faced, prior to the match, and then during the match, obviously, we'll talk about that. Um, so let's step back a little bit, and we'll talk about the crop of players that were around your age at Voluntary. Go ahead and let the audience know who you were banging balls with on a daily basis.
Well,
The group's incredible.
on my court, number one was Jimmy Arias, who was top 20 in the world at 17 years old. And at 18, he was top 5. We were on the courts whenever he was in town. I was playing every day with Ricky Brown, who was the boys 16-18's national Kalamazoo champion, Orange Bowl winner, Sunshine Cup winner. He was on my court every day. We lived together. We roomed together in the dorm. Every day, Aaron Crickstein was on the court with me when he was in from Michigan, and that was really pretty much full-time the last few years. Carling Bassett was on the court every day with us. She was playing with these guys, and I think it helped elevate her to the top 10 in the world in a very short order. I'll never forget how thrilling it was when she played Chris Evert at Amelia Island, and it was her first really coming out party, and she played Chris Evert on clay to 6-4 in the third set in the finals, and it was unbelievable. We all thought for a second she was going to beat Chris Evert, which, as you know, was the holy grail of the world of tennis.
Yep.
And so I was on the court with Carling Bassett, Jimmy Arias, Aaron Crickstein, and Ricky Brown, and that was our court. And then from time to time, David Wheaton would jump on the court. He'd usually a couple courts down because he was younger. Courier would come up and play a little bit, but he was always a couple courts down because he was only 12, 13 years old. But yeah, it was a barn burner, and I tried to replicate that in Orlando, and it was really fun to do that. But that was my court, and it was tough. A lot of tennis.
It was. I want to dive into the personal struggles you had at Voluntari's. I'm an academy kid. I didn't go to an academy that was far away. I was fortunate enough to have Rick Macy's in my backyard. I grew up in Boca Raton when he was in Delray. When Rick Macy's left, it was taken over by the International Tennis Academy in 1997, which was the group of Scott Del Mastro, Alan Ma, and Andre LaBelle.
Yep.
And I know it's tough. There's a lot of peer pressure when you're at an academy, and just to not only just fit in, but to make sure that you're entrenched in the culture of the academy. This book was fascinating when the struggles that you had, knowing that you were in the closet at that time, and having if I read this correctly, the first person that you really fell for was a competitor of yours, and someone that you wanted to play and beat, but yet it was so difficult because of your feelings. Try to elaborate what it was like being 16, 17 years old at the most prestigious tennis academy in the world, knowing how tough it would have been for you to come out there.
Well, it's so difficult to talk about even today because I really didn't know that I was gay. I just thought that I was feeling a little more friendly, or I just felt like going to the tournaments, and I always would be sad on Sunday when the tournaments would be over because I had so much fun hanging out. had so much fun, running around the hotel and jumping in the pools and having fun. I wasn't thinking about sex or wanting to hook up with anybody. I mean, you've seen some pictures of me. I was a pretty handsome young kid, and I had a lot of girlfriends, and having girlfriends and trying to work through all that was very easy for me. I will tell you, it was very easy for me. I dated Aaron Crickstein's sister for 2 years. I really, really did love her, but I felt differently towards like my friend Danny Leal, who I just would rather hang out with him, go to the movies, play tennis, talk about football, whatever. I just felt like comfortable. So, for me, gay's not about sex. You can do that with anybody, anytime, anywhere. It was about, for me, I started to realize I feel a little too close to him. Like, I feel like I care if he wins his matches. I should not care if he wins. I kind of like think he's really nice. He's like, and he's so genuine. I mean, I was taking personal our friendship. And so I knew right away, okay, there's something off here. I just felt there was something off. And, at 54 years old now, I can kind of probably say I felt I was in love. I mean, I'm embarrassed to even say it today. The whole world knows, but it's still hard for me to say those words. I think I was like in love, and it's like, man, this cannot be happening to me. This cannot be happening. And so I would go to church, Brian, and stay there for 3 hours and pray and beg God to change me. I mean, to change that feeling, to change that desire to want to, just even want to be around them. I just want to kick their ass and win national championships and win the U.S. Open one day. F all this other stupid stuff. And it was rough. It was really, really, really rough. I hit it well. I fooled everybody.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
dated hot girls. And I did enjoy that too. I mean, I loved all that, but I never fell in love. That's the difference. I never fell in love with a girl. And I don't want to say fortunately or unfortunately, the LGBT community will kill me. I'm a figure there. I'm in the LGBT Hall of Fame. I've been a media publisher. I've taken a company public. I've owned all the top magazines in the United States and websites. So for me to say, hey, I'm a little bit like, I wish it wasn't my life. In those days, I got to admit, I saw it as a curse.
Yeah.
As I got older in life with the book, I saw it more as a blessing. But it was a rough one, Brian, a real rough one.
I'm sure it was. I guess you've sort of answered this question, but as I was reading the book, I'm thinking in my mind, did Bobby actually enjoy his dating and physical contact with women? And
I did.
You did? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that answers the question.
My partner will kill me. He doesn't like tennis much, but I would, hey, sign me up.
Yeah.
Well, that part of it I loved.
Yeah.
I didn't fall in love. I mean, I see Mark Urbanicek's on, his mom, I just think's the most incredible tennis mom in person, and she's gorgeous and beautiful. And she was always like trying to say, hey, Bobby, who are you dating? Or can I introduce you to someone? Because I was in my, early 30s when I was coaching Mark. And people are like, hey, what's up with Bobby? He's flipping houses. He's making money. He's got a house that he just bought. He's got a BMW. He's got a few bucks. And who's he dating? And that was stressful. And, that was, and we'll get into that later, but that was the most stressful years of my life, as I'll explain why later. But yeah, it was rough.
All right. So now we'll go back to Louisville, Kentucky, the clay court nationals. Fascinating scenario between your mother and then the gentleman that is your host. Probably one of the parts of the book that really just hit me hard. Like, this guy is going through so much, and he's in the finals of the clay court nationals. Here I am at the clay court nationals in 1997, worrying about the most little things on earth. And I'm playing in this, and I'm just praying to get to the third round, and you're in the finals, facing this incredible adversity. Set the stage for what you were dealing with for this audience and the audience that will watch on this replay, going into that finals against Aaron Crickstein. It's unbelievable.
So we had just flown in. I'd made the Junior Davis team. I was the number 2 seed at the hard courts. Playing out on the West Coast for about a month, number 1 Florida. And the clay courts was my real opportunity to win a national championship. I was a clay court player. I had beaten Emilio Sanchez at the Orange Bowl. I had beaten Karl Novacek. You know, they were top 10 in the world.
Yeah.
I had just beaten Michael Pernfors, who became the best college player, one of them of all time, in finals of the French Open. So I'd just come off some really great wins. I had, you know, and I really felt like I could beat Aaron Krickstein because I felt like I could run down his big forehand. I kind of felt like he looked up to me because I was older. I was dating his sister a little bit, and he thought I was cool. And I just thought I had an edge on him. You know, all the little edges that, you know, that you think you've got. But, you know, the round of 16, I played Eric Amon, who was national champion, 12s, 14s, 16s, Olympic player. He made the Olympic team. He wasn't a clay courter. I beat him like 2-2. I played Robbie Weiss, the most winningest junior of all time, 24 gold balls,
Wow.
and national junior champion, 12, 14, 16s. And I beat him 7-5 in the third, and I cramped up. I was puking my guts out. And, you know, a couple days prior to that, I'm flying in from California, and I'm coming down the escalator in Louisville, and this big, heavy-set guy with rings on and, you know, kind of, you know, heavy. He's the tournament director for the housing. He's the assistant tournament director, but he's in charge of housing. He took one look at me and Danny Leal, and understand Danny Leal and I's friendship, how I kind of felt towards my friend Danny. He took one look at me and said, "You're staying at my house." He was in charge of housing for the Junior Davis Cup team, which is now the national team. And we became quite friendly, and I learned very quickly he was turned on by me because I could kind of tell when somebody was liking me in a way that's different than normal, guys and girls. So I grew up from 12, 13 years old, people looking at me in the locker rooms, guys and girls at my club. So I picked up on it pretty quickly. Well, after I beat Robbie Weiss, he knew that my mom was dying of cancer, and he knew that my mom had never been out of Florida to watch me play ever. She never saw me on a big stage. She watched me win Lakeland. She watched me win the state close. She watched me get the semi at the Easter Bowl, but she never saw me in front of 5,000 people
Yeah.
play. Well, he said, if you play with me a little bit, I'll help you out a little bit.
Huh.
Unfortunately, what that meant was he wanted to touch me and do things to me that are very inappropriate. And here I'm thinking, what a blessed gift this would be for me to allow him to fly my mom up and watch me play tomorrow in the semifinals against Luke Jensen, who the next year was the world junior champion, #1 in the world, #1 in the United States. Great player, by the way. And he put in a couple little pornos back in those days. We're watching it. It's like 6:30 at night. Danny Leal's out running around. The guy had like 5 Mercedes Benzes. So Danny was out running around somewhere, hanging out, went to the movies or whatever. And I let him do it. And I can't even tell you how I cried that whole night, just all night. Well, the next morning, he buys an airline ticket, calls my mom, organizes a limousine, gets her to Louisville, Kentucky. And she gets there, and they wheel her up in the wheelchair. And think about this. In the semifinals, I'm down a set in 4-2. She shows up. She starts cheering me like from her death. I mean, literally, this woman was so close to death. She died 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
I could hear her cheering for me. And it just killed me. And I came back and won that match.
Yeah.
And the next night, the Predator snuck into my room after we all had dinner because my mom was staying with us at his house. And he did this to me again because he says now, you know, and he was nice about it. He wasn't like being nasty.
Yeah.
I let him do it again. You know, nothing terrible crazy, but I let him play with me again. And he said he was very proud of me. He said, "You're gay." And I said, "No, I'm not. I absolutely am not." I said, "I'm doing this because of what you did for my mom. Don't ever confuse this." And we got into it a little bit. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got to play Aaron Krickstein at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. No kidding.
And
Jesus.
so the next morning, you know, between Nick sitting up there with the Kricksteins now, because Nick flew in the night before for the finals.
Yep.
Got my Junior Davis Cup coach. I've got my girlfriend that came in from SMU the day before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mary Claire O'Brien. I've got the McEnroe family. I've got all the Junior Davis Cup players. I've got my mom sitting there, and I've got the Predator sitting next to my mom. And I'm looking over there, and my emotions are so unbelievably, I don't even know what to think, Brian. I mean, I'm sitting there like, I've just been molested for 2 nights in a row. My mom's going to die in a few weeks. She's never seen me play before. My coach is over here, hanging out with Aaron's family, and I'm playing for my first national championships. And I was just a broke-ass kid from a dirt road, 2-bedroom house. I mean, the kids from Orlando know where I live. They can't even believe the house I grew up on. And it's still a dirt road, still 2 bedrooms, 1 little bathroom, the worst little neighborhood ever. And here I am, Bobby Blair, the national junior potential champion.
Yeah.
And molested, and being accused of being gay, and pulling my pants down and doing things I had no business doing. It was rough. That was a tough go. But you know what? It got me ready to help people in life with adversity.
Yeah.
Because adversity at its greatest level.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this guy, well, Predator, I mean, he didn't know anything about you prior to this. The irony that you obviously had some homosexual tendencies were there, but do you think this guy would have pushed the issue on a completely heterosexual male to get what he wanted?
Brian, just so you know, one of the ways that he actually interested me in doing it, he told me about a bunch of other players from over the past 10 years that he had messed with.
Okay.
And I don't want to say their names.
No. Yeah.
But they were players on great players. And because he was always in charge of the Junior Davis Cup housing.
Right.
So players in America were at his disposal to put wherever he wanted them to go. And he would always put who he felt most outrageous with or turned on by in his house. And
wow. Unbelievable.
I was the victim that year.
Was this guy ever accused, charged for any of this? Obviously, this is transpiring many years ago where people got away with a lot more then. And obviously, so nothing came about of this.
No, and what's really crazy is that, my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And the last words that she said to me at that court is that her job was done. And
wow.
So I felt in that she knew I was going to go on and live a wonderful life, and I was going to be a winner. I was going to perform. I was going to get things accomplished. I could handle any adversity in the world. I could come from nothing. I can deal with pressure and stress. And it was all based on those few years at the academy and that experience at that tournament. I walked away from that over the course of a few years later saying I can deal with anything if I can do that.
Yeah.
And because I was so indebted to him, you won't believe this, but I stayed friends with him. And 10 years later, he was driving down to pick up my brother and my friend Randy Kenke from the old days. And a bunch of us, when the academy was going, if you can believe it, it was 93. I was flying in from Australia. I was coaching Kathy Rinaldi her last few years. She was top 10 in singles and doubles in the world. And he has a massive heart attack on 75, 2 hours from my house, and drops dead on 75. And I'm flying in from the airport, and we're driving straight out to the little town just outside of Jacksonville, but coming down 75. Can't remember the name of the city, but we went and picked him up, and he was in the morgue, and I had to get him back to Louisville to his family.
Wow. Well, you did reconnect with him prior to that. Was there a situation?
We had an ongoing friendship.
Yeah.
From the time he did that to me until the day he died.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why, because he gave my mom an experience that my mom had virtually no pleasure in life. She had a very bad relationship with her husband. She was a pro basketball player in the 50s for the version of what the WNBA is today. Her dad, which was my grandfather, made her stop playing basketball because the girls were lesbians. And I don't know if my mom was lesbian or not, but she wasn't the typical mom wearing dresses and getting all dolled up. I mean, she wore, shirts and shorts, and she looked like Billie Jean King, who I love to death. She
Right.
was, and so her father, when she got so depressed when she couldn't play basketball anymore, gave her the brain shock treatments that they did back in the 50s.
Oh my God.
And it's
Jeez.
been proven that women that got that and got all that type of treatment, they got cancer in their 40s and 50s. And I believe that's what killed my mom. And so my mom was never, ever exposed to any real happiness. Quite
Sure.
frankly, I was her only happiness. And for her to be able to say that she can now die and she can know that I'm on my way meant everything to me. And for the person that gave her that opportunity, be it I had to sacrifice my body, my everything for it, to this day it was worth it. I would do it again.
Wow, that's fascinating. All right, this book is amazing. By the way, I think I've already mentioned it. I haven't read a book in a while, but once I picked it up, people, I just kept going, and I did it. I did it the day or two before Thanksgiving, because there's just a story within a story within a story. If you want to know about tennis, it's amazing. If you want to know about the struggles of what Bobby went through, it's even more incredible. It makes you feel like, wow, I thought I had some adversity in front of me, but nothing like what Bobby went through here. We can't go over everything, obviously, and that's a good thing. So people could possibly do it themselves by purchasing the book. But um, let's skip to Arkansas, if we can. Um, when I didn't know he went to Arkansas until I read the book. So before I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading this book, Bobby's going to go to college in a very liberal area, maybe Cal Berkeley, maybe somewhere that wouldn't be in the deep South in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But you chose the University of Arkansas, Woo Pig. Why? How? Give that to the audience.
Yeah, I had no choice in
Okay.
where college. Nick Bollettieri made the choice for me.
Okay.
I was the number one recruit in the class of '83. I was the number one player in the United States going to college. Aaron Crickstein turned pro. Rick Leach's father was the coach at Southern California,
Sure.
and then
Yep.
I was the next kid in line. So I had full scholarship offers at 19 of the top 20 schools, and the only one I did not get a scholarship offer to was Stanford.
Okay.
2 years earlier, Mike DePalmer Jr., who was the top player in Florida all the way through, signed a letter of intent to go to the University of Arkansas, and he was the number one recruit of the class of 80 or 81. His father got offered the head coaching job at the University of Tennessee, Mike DePalmer Sr. So the deal was this. Nick Bollettieri negotiated a deal with Coach Tom Pucci that said, Tom Pucci said, I will let Mike DePalmer Jr. out of the letter of intent, and I will, in return, release him to Tennessee. But Nick, your next top junior, you're sending to Arkansas.
Wow, you're like a free agent. You had, I mean, excuse me, you really, that, I guess that's the way it was back then. Nick
Well,
Bollettieri says you go there, you're going there.
well, he paid everything for me. I owe him my life.
Sure. Yeah.
He did, I mean, this guy saved my life.
Yeah.
So I would have gone to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to Arkansas, didn't visit anywhere else. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, be it was that environment that you're speaking about. That was the last thing on my mind, looking to run around and hook up with guys.
Right.
Honestly, it was just not even in my DNA at the time. I had nobody there that I felt particularly close to. I loved my team, but not the way I felt towards Danny Leal. I actually was, this is a phase. I met the most incredible girl flying home from my mom's
Yeah,
funeral.
that was a great story. Great story there. Yeah.
Yeah. And just real quick is that my mom died September 8th. It was my first week of college. I just gotten back from Kalamazoo, stayed with the Cricksteins, had nowhere to go. They flew me to Arkansas because my mom, they had no money. I
Right.
don't even know thought I was going to get to college. Back in the days, they had no cell phone.
Yeah.
I was like calling home. I was already independent. I was going to have to walk there, or I had $50
You
for
had no
my.
idea.
But
Unbelievable.
the Cricksteins paid my way. They took me home. After the finals was Patrick McEnroe versus Aaron Crickstein. After the match, Dr. Crickstein said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know. I'm embarrassed to tell you. I don't know." He said, "Get in the car, coming with us." They took me to Grosse Pointe, Michigan. They bought me an airline ticket, and 2 days later, they flew me to Fayetteville.
Unbelievable.
And
That's wow.
yeah, and so I met this girl flying home from my mom's funeral, and she was 25. She was a law student.
Yeah.
So incredibly fun, and she took care of me like in a way that I loved it. She was so nice. The sex was incredible. I'm starting to think, oh my God, maybe I was just in a weird, you know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah.
I was just a kid that was enamored with these rich kids in tennis, and I'm the poor kid, and I loved how nice their parents were and how well dressed they were and how nice the cars. Maybe I just was enamored with these people and kids, and maybe I just wanted to be like them. So I felt closer to them than me. So I was like thinking, oh, maybe the switch is, maybe I'm not this. And of course, I was fighting it really bad because of what Jim was doing. His
Yeah.
name was Baird. And so throughout my college time, I was a little, it was on the burner, let's say. But it all changed when I flew out to the NCAA All-American Championships,
Yeah.
staying Holiday Inn at the 405 in Sunset, and sneaking over to Santa Monica Boulevard. And when I saw that, man, I said, holy crap. I saw a lot
The
of
new
people.
world. Yeah.
I saw a lot of people confused. I saw a lot of people sick and didn't even know that they were dying from AIDS at that time. I met and made a lot of friends. I became best friends with one of the most famous comedians in the world. I can't mention his name because I promised I never would. I met one of the most famous actors of all time. Can't mention his name, but we hooked up. So much about the book. I could have sold so many more copies if I just, hitting tennis balls off of the Hollywood sign with one of the most soon-to-be famous actors in our generation is like, who's still not out, by the way. It was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I realized that I might be able to figure this out. I just got to get out of college, and you have no idea. The day I beat Pat Cash at the Tournament of Champions in Forest Hills, I had been in a gay bar the night before, and my biggest fear walking into the press room in the press conference was, holy crap, what if one of these reporters is gay, was in that bar last night, and I don't know who they are?
Yeah.
I'm so damn scared that I'm going to be outed right there on the spot. You would have thought I was a little 9-year-old hiding. I was so freaking scared that I was outed.
You battled that so much. But I don't think I could be, you're gonna correct me if I'm wrong. It did seem like in the book that you had that adversity so much in Fayetteville. I feel like all of that was at Voluntary and then post Fayetteville. Did you feel comfortable with the team? You're cruising, you're getting through school, and you're not worried about it as much. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I was loving the team. I was loving the traveling. I was loving sneaking off to LA every once in a while.
Yeah.
I was absolutely not going to do anything to get outed. I was not going to take any chance whatsoever. Um, I was thinking the switch might have been turned anyways. I wasn't looking to really do anything more to enhance it. But like I said, my junior year, actually it was my sophomore year when I got out to LA for the first time. And then my junior year, I made the semis of the All-American Championships. And I was sneaking out of that damn hotel every night, sneaking around. How I got to the semifinals and beat Brad Pierce and I beat Richard Matuszewski, the #1 player at Clemson, who was 85 in the world 4 months later, 0-0.
Jesus.
I
Wow.
won. Back in those days, we played no ad scoring. I'm playing on the center court. I'm playing Matuszewski, and I won 11 of 12 points, 3 all points. 11 of the 12, I won 3 all points. I had beaten Jim Grab, who was #1 in the world in doubles a year or two later with McEnroe. Beat him like a drum in the first round. He was the #1 seed. I'm doing all this while I'm running around, you know.
Wow. It's amazing. What did you think of the University of Arkansas away from tennis?
Love it.
School and the culture, football. And give us the timeline, the years at the University of Arkansas.
83 to 86.
Okay. Do you feel a lot of pride in the University of Arkansas? Are you a fan of that school?
I am. I love the University of Arkansas. I love my first coach, Tom Pucci. I love my second coach, Ron Hightower. Um, I love the coach that took over there. Mike Patrick, who ended up at Tennessee for almost 25, 30 years. And then ultimately, Robert Cox was there for a long time. As you may know, my book was turned into a documentary by Fox 2 years ago. And of course, they wanted to go back to Fayetteville, and they wanted me to get on the courts with the kids. And incredibly, Robert Cox gave me a great tour, but the new coach there, who Mark and all the kids know, he would not allow me to get on the courts with the kids, and he would not be interviewed because we're in the Bible Belt of Arkansas, and he felt like if he embraced me as gay and said it's all good, it's all great to have gay kids on your team, it would kill his recruiting. And he wasn't doing so well at the time. And, he just came out of University of Florida with a national championship runner-up team. He was at Mississippi State for 17 years, one of the top college coaches in America. I'm one of the best players ever to hit that state, let alone play for that school. And he would not talk to me, would not be interviewed, and he did not let me on the courts.
What was the year that happened?
This was 2 years ago.
2016. Wow.
Yeah. So then there was a kid by the name of Matt Dooley, who was coached by my really great friend growing up, Jimmy Brown, who also won Kalamazoo 16s, 18s. Ricky Brown's older brother, my age. Jimmy coached this kid, Matt Dooley, at John Newcomb's. And the kid is at Notre Dame, of all places, the Catholic institution of the world. And 2 years into his college, he's playing 4 or 5. Straight acting kid, beautiful kid, handsome, smart, Catholic family. He's gay. Well, he tries to commit suicide. And he's reading, how there's no way Notre Dame would ever embrace him. He tried to kill himself. Well, Jimmy Brown got in touch with him, got him my book, and the rest is history. The kid read the book. He decided to give life a second chance. So we fly to Fayetteville. He flies to South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame campus. We meet for the first time, and we hug because he said to me, Bobby, I decided to give life a second chance because if you could have survived in the 80s, I can survive in the 2000s.
Sure. Yeah. No.
But the moral story is Notre Dame embraced this. Notre Dame athletic director showed up. The coach Bayless there, Bobby Bayless, showed up. They all got, here's the Catholic institution of the world saying, we love you.
Yep.
And Arkansas says, you might be going to hell.
Man, wow.
That was tough, but it made it, you know what? Television, it made the documentary good.
There you go. Absolutely. Going after Arkansas, you took a shot at the Pro Tour. Had some great moments in there. Talk about a match that we could go on and on with all the beginning and the start, but there was a match, if I remember correctly, that you just knew that your time was up in the pros. And I don't want to skip all your good because there is. It's just I want to get to all of the Florida tennis stuff as well as we get closer to the early to mid-90s. But there's a doubles match. Let me go to the doubles match. I want to say it was in New England. It may have been in Boston.
Yeah, it was the U.S.
Is that right?
Championships, Longwood Cricket Club.
This was a great story. How nervous you were when a gentleman that you met the night before was in the box with your team of people. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I was so foolish.
This is a good story.
My great friend in junior tennis was Mark Fishman, M-A-R-C. He was a great player in the 80s. Really great. Beautiful family, gorgeous kid. I just thought the world of him. So when I was out running around doing my thing, my name was Mark.
Yep.
It wasn't Bobby Blair, the tennis player. It was always Mark visiting my grandma, whatever city I was in. So one night, I'm playing doubles with Jay Berger. Berger, all-time greats in Florida. And we got a wild card, and we beat the number one team from UCLA, Buff Farrow and the other boy's name. He was so good. But anyways, We beat the number 1 team at UCLA, who also got a wild card. So now we're in the round of 16, and we're playing the number 1 team in the world. And I figured, we don't have much of a shot. And I thought, I'll just go out and have a couple beers. 2's my limit, right?
Yep.
And when you really shouldn't be having anything, I'm rooming with Jay Berger at this 5-star hotel because we're on the national team together.
Yep.
We flown in from Russia from the Goodwill games. And Jay's sleeping and getting prepared and talking to his dad every 10 minutes on the phone, because, Jay was really getting ready to be top 10 and Bobby was getting ready to flunk out. Stupid crap like what I did. So I went to a bar that night. I'm shooting pool. I'd always put the money in the jukebox, shoot pool. I'm a really good pool player for amateur status. And attract attention. End up meeting a guy by the name of Paul Giraldi. He's probably in his mid to late 30s. Coolest guy ever. Lawyer, straight acting. 2 beers turned into 5 or 6, and I was so unbelievably dumb. I told him to come to the courts tomorrow. I'll have his name at will call. I figured they'd just give him tickets somewhere because we're playing stadium match. We're the warm-up match before Lendl.
Yeah.
And we play those guys 7-5 in the third or 6-4. We had match point. I mean, we played at Davis. Jay and I are high-fiving and go. We almost beat the number 1 team in the world. And the guy that I had, met the night before, they had him sitting in the box seat with Stan Smith and Tom Gullickson in my national team.
Wow.
And my God, what do I do? The whole match, I'm looking at him, and like every little chance I get, I just like do this, like just please. He was so cool. He was so good. Nobody. And so our story was, because I saw him before the match, I didn't know where he was going to sit, but I said, if you run into anybody or if you're talking to me, just say that you're friends with my Uncle Jim.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting caveat. My uncle was the athletic director at Notre Dame. He's still alive. Back in the 80s. Dick Rosenthal. Actually, interesting, Brian. But so that was our story. He was friends with my uncle. He was out visiting. My uncle said he should come watch me play, and we got away with it. But that was the closest near miss of my life. And you know what I said to myself? If I don't start winning like immediately, big time, and I don't go shut this whole thing off big time, I'm just going to retire, and I'm going to get into coaching and maybe not being visible as what maybe getting into the top 50 would be. And because the reality is, Brian, I beat 3 top 10 players in the world. I won 2 professional tournaments. I was beating all the top players in the Orange Bowl that were top 10 in the world. I beat Novacek, Emilio Sanchez, Michael Pernford. They're all top 10 in 18 months to 24 months. In my freshman year of college, I won my first 27 matches in a row. I was ranked 10th in the nation as a freshman. I mean, I could have made it, but I'll be honest with you, this gay thing crushed.
Yeah, you're battling so many things off the court. Probably just was too taxing on you to be training to be a top 50 player in the world, and just the pressures behind it.
I was like, God, I couldn't even imagine the embarrassment, which I'll get to. And, when I got into coaching, so after I retired from playing tennis, I started the United States rookie professional tennis team because I felt like, how does a guy like me beat all these great players and I have no support? I have $100. I took the subway back to Manhattan to stay with a friend of mine from the Orlando Racket Club who hooked me up with housing. I had $100 to my name. I just beat the Wimbledon champion.
Oh, wow.
Got a subway ticket and $100. And it's like, I'm never going to make it with this. I have no money. I have no support. I have nothing. I can't go play the right tournaments. I can't go sit on the clay in Europe for 6 months and get the points that's required. I can't do all that. So, I just realized very early on I just wasn't going to make it. So I felt like if I could go create a team environment, go raise a bunch of money from people, and I would recruit the best college players or the best U.S. rookie pros that the USTA did not want. And all they wanted was Courier, Agassi, Chang, Sampras, Capriati, Davin. They didn't want, my guys, which were NCAA champions, from Donnie Leocraft from LSU to Eric Amon at USC to Scott Melville to John Boydum to Philip Johnson to Brian Shelton, who went on to – these were my kids. I was 23 years old. They were 21. I'm coaching them.
Wow.
Shelton. And I put 9 guys on the professional tour, raised almost $1 million from K-Swiss and Dennis Vandermeer and others. Dennis Vandermeer supported us. raised a lot of money, and caravan style, NBA style, we went from tournament to tournament as a team. 6:30 in the morning, team practices, team lunches. Everyone on the team had to watch everyone else's matches if they weren't playing. Team workouts, team travel. And within 2 years, I had 5 players in the main draw of the U.S. Open. Shelby Cannon won the mixed doubles, got to the quarters in doubles. Brian Shelton, third round U.S. Open against Connors. Philip Johnson, third round against Agassi. John Boydham against Mal Washington. Kenny Thorne, round of 16, doubles. I took kids from scratch that the USTA wrote off, put them in a team environment, worked the hell out of them, gave them a real structured environment. And I took all those kids to the top 100 in the world, and they have a career. And I did that for 3 years, and the travel was killing me. I'll never forget Philip Johnson's playing Andre and USA Networks and interviewing me before the match in the studio. And my heart's racing like 1,000 miles an hour. All I could think of is somebody's going to out me. Somebody's going to recognize me. Somebody's going to. That thought, Brian, never left my mind.
Yeah.
Never left my mind. So it was rough.
I bet it was. I want to ask you about Shelby Cannon, a guy that not many people probably know about, but legendary Florida tennis player. The reason I'm asking you about Shelby Cannon is the fact that I can walk to his country club that he is director of tennis of in Raleigh. I don't know Shelby that well. He works at a very prestigious country club that I just really never go to. And he's not very much. He doesn't do a whole lot within the community of Raleigh, North Carolina. He's really, that's a club that's just very secluded, very private. How good was Shelby Cannon? What's his pedigree like?
Shelby came from Gainesville, Florida.
Yep.
He was a late starter as well. He was not much in the 12s or 14s. He was a year before me. We played against him in junior tennis. We competed. Happy to say I never lost to him. He was a really, really good player. He had a great backhand. His forehand was pretty weak. He had great volleys. His serve was well placed, but an average serve. He didn't have much pace on it, but he placed it well. I think he was an overachiever. He made it to the top 30, 40 in doubles in the world. He won a Grand Slam. He played for 10 plus years. He played in the U.S. Open singles several times. He had a great career. And, when I started my rookie pro team, he was the first one to say, Bobby, I never beat you. I look up to you like you're my brother, older brother. You could help me incredibly. And he was on the team for 2 years. And our last moment together, quarters of doubles of the Open, and won the mixed doubles with Robin White, won the mixed doubles at the U.S. Open. And he went on to have an amazing career. Mom and dad were real supportive. He had a coach there, Lansky, I think, Mike Lansky. He was very competitive. He didn't cheat. He was an honest player. I think the world of Shelby. I'm not happy how things went after the U.S. Open. We had an arrangement financially, and it wasn't necessarily honored, but kids are kids, and, I don't burn bridges, and I let that just be part of something that's between Shelby and I.
All right. That's good analysis. That was a selfish question for me because I want to know the guy from Raleigh. Again, Shelby's been here for a long time, but he doesn't do a whole lot with outside of this very, very prestigious club that he's at. Okay. I'm going to skip around a lot. There's a lot. There's too much. And I think I want people, and I'll plug this again. And Bobby, at the end of this interview, will tell you how to find this book. But I want to skip to Florida tennis coaching days now. And I think that's what a lot of the people that are on this page are going to really want to know about the academies. You had 2 stints, 93, if I have that correct. Then you then you traveled south to Wellington for the Billie Jean deal, and then back. Do I have that timeline right?
Yeah, so U.S. Open 90 was the end of the rookie pro team.
Yeah.
And went to Orlando and started a little program there. I had coached World Team Tennis in 90 for Billie Jean King in July. She wanted to do an academy kind of with me, but not be there, but kind of support it and show up from time to time.
Sure.
So she said, get to Orlando, get yourself going, coach world team tennis for me again in 91 in Wellington, went to the Palm Beach Polo Club.
Right.
And she goes, let's see how things develop in the tennis academy world. She said, worst case scenario, we'll get you a great top 10 player and you can coach them and we'll figure something out. And a player that I'm kind of putting under my wing and you can kind of be the full-time person. Very similar to what she did with Craig Carden and Dr. Renee Richards, and where she would take a player under her wing, but not full-time and have a full-time coach. So I felt really blessed that she thought that much of me, and I was still playing really well. So I was a great hitting partner. And I had been around Mike Estep in college. I used to be Martina Navratilova's hitting partner, so I was around Mike a lot. Learned a lot about the net game, which wasn't my strength. So I learned how to coach playing the net and coach the transition game, although be it I wasn't very good at it. So I had the advantage of being around some really great coaches. So she believed in me as a coach and as a person. And then the Wellington club called me and said, hey, move your academy here. We'll give you 20 courts and we'll, pay you a bunch of money. And you're the coach here during the summer for the pro team. So I did that. Well, I didn't know that the investors would pull the plug on Billy at Wellington. And she said, well, let's move the team to Orlando. And we were looking at the country club up there where Mark lives. I can't remember the name. It's
Heathrow.
Yeah, that's right. So Heathrow had a nice stadium court that could be built out. They had the open lot across the street. They had plenty for parking. And the investor said, let's do Orlando. So I moved my Orlando. Now I moved from Wellington back to Orlando again. And I started my academy on January 1st of 92.
Okay, 92.
We were going to do the World Tennis in Orlando. And that fell through. And I'm going, man, kind of Billy's like, I'm going to stay loyal, though, because, you don't want Billie Jean King not on your side. And she always makes good. She felt terrible. She was kind of, moving me around a little bit. But it ended up being in Tampa.
Yeah, the World Team Tennis was in Tampa. Yep.
Yeah, it ended up being in Tampa that I coached and GM. So I was the GM for the first time, and I coached.
Where did they play their matches, Bobby? Where was the World Team Tennis Tampa matches held at?
Downtown at the Tampa Convention Center. Down there
wow. Okay.
down the Riverwalk. And so I was getting up at 5 a.m, driving to Tampa, getting there by 7, working as a GM, ticket sales, corporate sponsorships, box seats, doing everything to get World Team Tennis ready for the summer of 93 and 92, sorry. And I would leave there around 12:31, get back to Orlando by 3 o'clock. All the kids would show up, do 10, 8 o'clock at night, get home, get back to Tampa, and I did that for a year.
Did World Team Tennis sell in Tampa? Did it work?
Did not work. It only worked when stars show up. So we were sold out when Jimmy Connors showed up from the LA Strings. We were sold out when Martina Navratilova showed up from the Atlanta Thunder. But the other 6 home matches pulled maybe 1,000 people. And ones with Jimmy and Martina, we pulled about 8,000 people. And the owner of the team owned the Tampa Bay Storm. And the Tampa Bay Storm was the arena football team. And so he just didn't have any real interest in doing tennis again. And I was kind of like now focused on my kids. I had some of the best players in the United States, and I just felt like that they deserved my 100% attention. And I didn't need to be doing all this crazy around the world stuff and so I committed to my tennis academy and grew that, and that was my focus from 92 all the way on.
All right, so the fall of 1992, the focus is on the Bobby Blair Tennis Academy in Orange County. Where exactly was this first venue of yours?
The Orlando Racket Club, which was a fantastic facility, 12 clay courts, 2 hard courts, indoor basketball court, indoor gym, racquetball facility, locker room facilities, and it had a really nice little restaurant that was cheap. You could get cheap food there. Yeah. So the kids could, have a place to hang out and watch TV, and they could go play basketball and shoot hoops. And, one of the funnest things that was happening at that time before the RDV Center is the Orlando Magic would use the Orlando Racket Club with Buzzy Brayman he was the shooting coach for the Magic. So Shaq and Penny Hardaway and everybody, they would show up. they would show up and shoot baskets. And interestingly enough, Brian Williams, who you probably know the Brian Williams story, he was crazy, and he ended up getting murdered by his brother on a yacht. But he would show up. He wanted to play in the clinic, and he would take balls 5 feet range and just slam balls at kids, hit them in the face. I said, Brian, you can't come out here anymore. You just can't,
Yeah.
you can't do this crazy stuff. I mean, he was slugging my 12-year-olds in the face with, serves 5 feet away from him, and he's 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun with those days. It was great because I could offer an all-inclusive package: hard, clay, fitness, relaxation. It was a great facility. If I would have stayed in tennis, if I would have said, F it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to take the risk of being gay and come out, I would have bought the club for cheap because it went into foreclosure.
Yeah.
I would have property right next to it. I would have built some housing, and I'd still be in the tennis academy business today.
The Orlando Racket Club no longer exists. Miranda just typed that in. Where was the Orlando Racket Club located for those people that have an idea of the Orlando region? What part of town?
So you just take I-4 and you get off at Lee Road.
Okay.
And you go west about a mile, and it's on the left-hand side, Addison and Lee Road. It was set back about a block from Lee Road, and it was built by Dr. and Mrs. Deneen. Mary Deneen was #1 in Florida several years back in the 80s, and her brother's great personal friend of mine, Kevin, really spearheaded, they gave me a membership there when I was 11 and a half, 12 years old, and gave me an open tab at the food bar. And the coaches there, Murray Huff and Betty Pratt, who was a Wimbledon semifinalist, lost to Maureen Connolly, they all gave me free tennis lessons. Rick Day was there. They all helped me. Kathy Rinaldi would come there at 11 years old. At 13, she was 10 in the world. And so the Orlando Racket Club was home for me. And I just felt like, what a great way to build a business, help a bunch of kids. If the kids can pay, they can pay. If they can't, I'm going to give a bunch of scholarships. I had as many kids there free as they paid.
Yeah.
So it was a give back for me. I just loved every second of it.
The academy, did the academy move to OTC? Do I have that right at some point in 94, 95?
No, we never moved to the Orlando Tennis Center.
Oh, you never did? Okay. You always were there.
We stayed there until 1998. I wanted I wanted that generation of kids to get through college. I wanted my Kenny Clampers and my Matt Grahams and Julie Woods and Miranda Dutra. I wanted these kids to kind of get down the road before I left, because I started flipping houses. Actually, a lot of houses I flipped with Mark Urbanicek's father. He was a great mentor to me. He was a tough guy, but he was a great mentor. He taught me a lot. He reprimanded me a lot. He kicked my butt a lot, but I didn't know anything about business. So my experience in business was with Ernst Urbanicek, and man, did he teach me a lot. I respect him. I love him so much. A terrible funny story I have to tell. Mark, you'll love this. I'm going out with LZ Granderson, who you guys all know. He's the top CNN guy, ESPN guy. He's got Sports Nation. Well, back in 2003, he was writing at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution food column, and he was covering Michael Vick. And he and I met and honestly fell in love. We were together, and he hosted my press conference for ESPN, and we went on a cruise together. And I swear to God, and Mark, tell your parents they remember this like yesterday. And your mom eyes fell out of her head. I'm on the cruise with LZ, and we're hanging out, and we all go to dinner the first night. A cruise ship's pretty darn big.
Yeah.
Guess who's sitting right next to the table of my table?
Mr. and Mrs. Urbanicek.
Urbanicek.
Yeah.
And LZ was desperately trying to get me to come out. He reaches over and gives me this huge kiss, and I think still will not live to 100 because of the heart attack she had that second. All this fear and hiding and manipulation and all this stuff for all the years, look what I got at the end. I got outed by the tennis world, at least with her and Ernst. I don't think they went on to tell anyone. I don't even think they may have told Mark. Maybe they did. But that was my experience with LZ. And I was so flabbergasted. We got off the cruise the next morning, September 8th, 2003. Roddick's playing in the finals of the Open. I was coaching him as a national coach when
Wow.
he was 15. I was in charge of the boys 16 and unders back in those days. Jay Berger was in charge of the 18s. Bobby Burnson was in charge of the 14s. So I was excited as hell that Roddick's in the finals. LZ's supposed to come over, breaks up with me that night, saying, after that performance on the cruise, you being embarrassed, you can't live your truth. You're a hypocrite. I love you, but I can't deal with this. I'm out. And you know what? He went on to become the top LGBT journalist in the world, ESPN superstar, and he's my best friend. We play tennis out here in LA every week. He may be even watching, but he left me, and that was a wake-up call because I refused to come out. I just said, no, do it. It's not going to happen, period. And so in 2013, he hosted the press conference. And of course, you saw he wrote in the book and showed up at the book signing with Billie Jean, and the rest is history. But yeah, that was rough with their band checks on that cruise.
All right, I want to. Speaking of Mark Urbanchek, I want to go back to that academy. As I started this video, my memories of Bobby Blair. Never met Bobby, but again, I'm playing designateds in the mid '90s. I'm 3 years behind the Urbancheks and the Braswell got that crew. But you always saw the Bobby Blair crew that came through these designates. You're like, holy shit, this is a crew. This is the best crew that I have ever laid my eyes on. As a junior player that were not at the major academies.
Thank you.
So let's go to that 90. Let's go to, and a lot of those guys were at Omri's, and talk about the transition from the Adcocks and the Braswells and the Urbancheks, and some of those guys didn't go to Omri, like, you know, I don't know if Rodrigo did or Hurley, but what was the switch, do you think, that a lot of those guys came over to you?
Well, I think number one, I was a few short years earlier where they wanted to be, number one in Florida and a national contender. That's number one. Number two, I had come from an academy environment and was coached by, you know, one of the best coaches in the world. Number three, I could still play. I could get on the court and I could beat most of them. I think I could probably beat all of them still at that time. Number four, I would go to the tournaments on the weekends where Omri and others didn't want to go to do the tournaments. I love the tournaments.
Right.
First up, last one to bed, watch every kid. Losing 0-0, winning the state championship, I didn't care. If you're in my program, you're my kid. I love you. Whether you're winning or losing, you're my kid. So I think the commitment to tournaments, to attend, my ability to still play, the track record of being a good player, and really the kicker was, if an NCAA champ and an Orange Bowl champ and a U.S. Open winner is good enough for me, then they're good enough for me. Meaning the kids felt like, he's my coach. He's got all this experience. He just had 5 players in the U.S. Open. He knows what it takes for us to win. I know what it takes for a kid to decide that he's going to win the match at 4 all, 30 all. And I would convince them that they knew how to win because I prepared them to win. And we were there to win. And we were there to tell everyone in those days, I was still a kid, so I was really like, come on, let's be the best. Let's win everything.
Yeah.
Let's team. So I replicated the Bollettieri model. Go get the best kids, put them on the courts together, let them fight it out like cats and dogs. And like anything, the cream will rise to the top.
Yep.
And my Kenny Wasserman, love that kid.
Let's talk about Kenny Wasserman. Kenny Wasserman grew up in North Miami Beach, Florida. And I learned about Kenny Wasserman. I was Kenny's 2 years older than me. So I didn't realize when I saw him with your crew, it didn't make sense to me. Back then, there's no internet. There's no Facebook. How does Kenny Wasserman land in Orlando with you? Give us that story.
Well, I want to start by saying I love his parents to death. Steve was a young father in his early 40s. He was really passionate about Kenny's tennis.
Yeah.
And too far. It was, the family instrument was not with the tennis involved. When the tennis was removed from the North Beach house and the tennis was moved to Orlando, the family became a lot better. So I got a phone call. It was 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. Kenny, it was late at night. I remember that. called my house and said, Coach Bobby, can I come to Orlando? I said, tell me where to pick you up. And Kenny actually moved in with Trey Adcock. And that was a very competitive environment because Trey's dad was also extremely competitive and was very, very motivated and passionate about tennis. So the relationship between Trey and Kenny being so competitive, and you've got to remember, Kenny and Trey were top 3, 4 in the state. They were playing each other for championships.
Yep.
That didn't work out too well at the Adcock's house, only because of the kids. God bless the parents for taking in Kenny. But Kenny ended up moving to my house, moved him into one of my guest bedrooms, and I was his dad. I was his day. Wasserman and I are father, son, brother, uncle, whatever we are best damn friends. And his life has turned out incredible. He's beautifully married.
Yeah.
Incredible career, multifaceted career. Summer is up in May, in working the tennis, real estate, and other ventures, and buying, RVs and renting them out, Airbnb. I mean, I think he learned the entrepreneur spirit from me because he's a jack of all trades, makes a ton of money, he's happy, so humble, greatest kid in the world, really the greatest kid in the world.
Well, Bobby, I got to say that there's about 5 guys there that have all just done amazing things in their life, and I've gotten to know them because of this page. Urbanacek, Rodrigo, I knew Hurley before he came to Orlando because he's a Boca kid. You got those 3. You have Kenny, as you alluded to, and Trey Alcott. I mean, all of these guys that were a little bit older than me, I looked up to, and now they're just doing amazing things in life. So, that just shows you that there was a very good culture at that academy at that time. There was good learning lessons there, is what I'm trying to get to. So you got to be happy to see all those guys doing what they're doing today as a coach. That must be a great feeling.
Well, I love the idea that I could put a bunch of kids together that had a lot of pressure on the home front, and I could get them in an environment with me for 3 or 4 hours and embrace the competitive nature of trying to achieve in life without having to do it in a way that's inappropriate or unprofessional or not ethical.
Yeah.
And I said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to kick the ass out of that kid over there, but don't cheat him. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best out here, but don't take a shortcut. It's going to come down to who wants it the most, who believes in their self the most, and who works the hardest. Who's signing up for that? And that's where you believe in yourself at 3-all, 30-all, third set. And that big, important game is a game changer. And my kids, I think, believe they deserve to win. I remember learning that from Luke Jensen. He looked at me in Russia at the Goodwill Games and said, Bobby, every match I play, I deserve to win. I said, what makes you think that you deserve to win more than me? I work harder. I take my vitamins. I go to bed early. Blah, blah, blah. He did everything that may or may not have made a difference, but guess what it did? Right here. Right here, he says, I deserve to beat you because you drink beer, or you didn't do this, or you did that, or you didn't. I got a better coach. Whatever he did, right here told him I deserve to win. So I tried teaching my kids that they deserve to win. I also taught him this. You see that kid across the net from you? He loses every single tournament he plays. Even if he's number 1 in the state, he's probably going to lose 3, 4 times this year. If he doesn't lose in Florida, he's going to lose in Kalamazoo. He's going to lose in the clay courts. The chances of him being the number 1 in the United States out of 1,000 kids is about that percentage. So why aren't you the one this week that's going to give him his big L? Why can't you be the one that's unpacking? Why can't you? He's not that much better. He's here. And guess what? He thinks he's better than you. So when it gets really tight, he's going to get nervous. And when he gets nervous, you don't make errors. You get your first serve in. You put pressure on his weakness, and you keep your head up and shoulders back, and you never look tired. You make him realize that you're there to win, and you're not intimidated. And that's how I taught my kids, and that's how they live their life today.
That's great. I need that speech before my next match. It's fascinating because I have a couple of my old coaches here watching. I have Vernon Gattone. I have Joey Lavulo. I have Ken Herman. These are all guys that were in Boca, Rick Macy's at the time. So it's pretty cool to see that.
All guys that I wanted to kick Mark Urbanchek's butt just to make them better. All kids that, You know, to get Ty Braswell and Mark Urbanchek on the same court was a miracle of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And we did that.
Well, let me ask you about that 94-95 crew. That's the Urbanchek, Braswell, Rodrigo Gomez, Adcock, 18 years. Give me a story at a designated or state closed that will always be ingrained in your mind of one of those players that I've just mentioned. Do you have anything for me? A great moment in time, whether it's Urbanchek, it doesn't matter, any of those guys.
Well, you know, I think the greatest thing that for me, my biggest moment is realizing that Mark Urbanchek was better than all my kids for the most part, and that he needed to move on from the Bobby Blair Tennis Academy. And so I hooked him up at the ball and got him into Bollettieri's, and his roommate was Tommy Haas. I knew that if he was on the court with Tommy Haas and others, not that my kids weren't great, but I just felt like that Mark had the potential to be top 20, 30 in the world. And I felt like, you know, he needed to go to Bollettieri's. And I remember his mom and I driving over there and getting it all set up. I was heartbroken. I was giving up my number one kid. But I also I realized I was still thinking somebody took me to Bollettieri's a few years ago and it made my life. Right. And to me, it was the right thing to do. It was just, and I always felt like that if kids graduated from me and I couldn't offer them the best, then I would ship them to the best and get them where they needed to be. So that experience sets out. I'll just remember the early mornings, everybody's nervous and the parents are nervous. And I just told my kids that you're here to win. Everyone's nervous. Just look like you're the best. Don't look tired. Keep your head up and shoulders back. Smile all the time. Look happy. You know, when you hit a big shot at them, give them that extra little look like I got you. I said, that's all fun stuff. And you're going to get some reward. You've put in the price. You've worked. You've run. You've hit. You've played the sets. Come on, baby. You got this.
Was there a Florida tennis player of that era, meaning the age range of the guys we just been talking about, the Urbanchek, Braswell, Rodrigo Gomez, Trey Adcock, that you didn't coach, but you saw on the Florida tennis circuit in these designated and state closed, you said, boy, that guy, that kid has it. I wish he was with me. Can you remember a player from the mid-90s?
Yeah, I always thought Rudy Rake was a really great, talented player, but he wasn't a hard worker. Okay. And he was lazy, and he didn't have the killer attitude. See, he had the smiley face all the time because he was winning usually, but he was not smiling with the killer instinct. He was smiling because he was just smiling. And, you know, Rudy Rake was really, really darn good. You know, Ty Braswell was my Brian Shelton. You know, huge serve, great backhand, horrible forehand, but big time hitting player. I felt like if Ty Braswell would have gone to a college where he could have really been challenged, like UCLA or UC, I think that Ty Braswell would have been a top 100 player because he had the serve and the backhand. If we can get Brian Shelton's forehand to go in, anybody's forehand will go in. And, you know, I just felt like Braswell could have been a pro. I honestly didn't feel like any of my other guys could have been top 100, you know, at that time, which only a couple players in that generation ever did make the top 100. I felt Urbanchek could have been top 20 or 30. He was so incredibly talented, took the ball early, never missed, competitive in nature, had hands around the net, had a good little serve, being a smaller guy, kept the guy on the you know, neutral zone on the serves. Second serves never really crushed him. He was a good flat returner. He had a little slice. He could get in on the backhand. He could drop volley. He could deep volley. Had a good overhead. Real great competitor. The closer it was, the better he was. Sometimes he'd throw in the towel if he was getting beat. I remember him throwing in the towel in Louisville, Kentucky, in the back draw to Brian Vahaley. Oh, wow. Really pissed me off. But, you know, as the back draw, he was there to win a national championship. Sometimes I get it. You know, Mom always told me, Bobby, the biggest loser in the tournament is the runner-up, because if you're that darn close, come on, let's make it happen. If you're losing the second round, let's just have a good time.
What this to me is a very special moment to talk to you, because it hits home with all the players you mentioned, that the era of those guys. Now I think you're the 16s national coach when I'm in the 16s. Obviously, I never got my game to the national coaching level that you guys would give me a look. I was a top 10 Florida guy, but not a top 10 national guy. Give me the years that you were coaching in the 16s national realm. I want to say it was 95, 96. Do I have that right?
96, 97.
96, 97. Okay.
And I also kind of shared the role for the 18s with Jay Berger. I coached the Bryans at a few tournaments at the USCA development in Key Biscayne. And, my players were David Martin, Steve Burke. I love Steve Burke, world champion. He was everything that I kind of wanted to be in junior tennis. He took my obnoxiousness to another level in a way.
Yeah, you think so?
I think I only did 2 bathroom breaks, but I really was cramping, although cramping is not a reason to stop. I just thought Steve Burke was intelligent, intellectual. He was trading stock at 16 years old. I took him to Italy one year, and I love Steve Burke. I love David Martin. I coached Taylor Dent. I knew Taylor Dent was going to be great because that was what I thought about Ty Braswell. Huge serve instead of a huge backhand. He had a huge forehand. Ty Braswell, I think Ty Braswell could have been my best junior player.
Was it just underdeveloped with Dave Barron at Florida State? That was actually the school I was going to go to, but just didn't get the training he needed, huh?
No.
Yeah.
And I don't think he had the professional mindset. You want to be a professional player, you got to determine that that's your goal. I think he was going to be satisfied getting, really good grades and, probably not being a professional tennis player. So if you want to be a professional tennis player, you got to start buying into that really young.
Right.
You really got to start thinking about that at 13, 14, because it takes the commitment and dedication to do that. I only have 10% left on my phone, so
I know, me too. But yeah, I mean, but I think we've hit on a lot as far as the.
You want to say a couple of things though, if you don't mind?
No, absolutely, yeah. If you want to speak on some things without me going further, please go ahead before your phone and possibly mine dies.
No, I just want to say that the biggest thing for me was going back to my personal issue was I hit it and protected it so much from 1992 to 1998 because I absolutely never wanted to embarrass my kids.
Right. Yeah.
We were the cool kids. I was the cool coach.
You're like Cobra Kai, Bobby. The way you're describing this, very similar to Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid with your crew. Do you remember the
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, they came to the tournaments, the badass kids, the best kids. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah, and I kind of looked at it as like, when Nick was at the U.S. Open with Kathleen Horvath, Carling Bassett, Jimmy Arias, and, that was his crew. My kids were my family. They were the family I was never going to have. I knew that.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to embarrass them. I never would have allowed that to happen. Tough.
Yeah. Well, I think back in those days, it would have been very difficult for those kids to learn about it, and then other kids diving into the fact, oh, your coach is gay, blah blah blah. It would have been as tough as it would have been for you. It would have been devastating for all those kids. That's just the way it was, And I applaud you for that. I mean, it's amazing what you went through.
I did everything in the world to hide it.
Yeah.
I did everything because I respected my parents so much. I respected the kids so much. I wanted them to have every advantage in the world to win because winning in those days elevated their ability to a better college, to a better life, to, the better school, to a better circle of influence. I was not going to let anything get in the world of that. It's why I left tennis. Talk about it in the book. I left tennis because I was just in the 30s now, and I was doing real estate, and I would have, if I wasn't gay, I'd have, I hope, one of the biggest academies in the world, and would have helped a lot of kids, and that's why I'm out helping kids now. I'm doing it for free everywhere I can. I did an event with my coach this summer, Murray Huff, in Vancouver. I feel like there's been 30 years, 25 years where a lot of kids missed out on me, good, bad, or indifferent. I've missed out on them. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping kids achieve in tennis so they can achieve in life.
That's great.
And that's my dream, to be able to do that. It's always been my passion.
Bobby, I have a question that I've been meaning to ask you. If the USTA called,
Yeah.
you know where they're located now, in East Orlando, and they said, we want you as our #1 guy. Do you
Yep.
pack your bags to the East Coast and they give you the keys to the vehicle?
I would do it.
You would do it. Okay.
Because they asked me to do that in 1996 as a kid. In 96, I was 32 years old. That's still, to me, a kid.
Yep.
And I was and I was their guy. I was in charge of the 16s, which is the most crucial group to have. And I would do that. I would say, Katrina Adams, who I love, we're friends. We meet, we talk. She invited me to the President's Box at the U.S. Open 2 years ago. She's embraced my book. And if this generation, the 21st century, would allow that, my battery's going to die. I'll pack my bags. I'll see you in Orlando in the morning.
I would hope they would. Bobby, how do we find your book?
Just go to Amazon, Amazon.com, Hiding Inside the Baseline. Also, what's really fun to watch is the documentary. Go on YouTube, just put in Hiding Inside the Baseline. It's a documentary, 24 minutes.
Okay.
The book's on Amazon. It's cheap. It's $10. If you want it free, just inbox me. I'll mail you one. It's been a joy to be with you, Brian.
Likewise, this is one of my favorite interviews. I mean, you have, we only dove into probably 22% of what this book has to offer. So I do encourage you guys to go to Amazon and identify this book and get a good read, because there's so much tennis involved, but there's also his story of what he went through. Not easy. And it's not just all about tennis. It's not just all about him battling homosexuality back in the 80s and 90s. It's just about a guy that has gone through a lot of different paths in life, but he happens to be a tennis guy and one of the best coaches and players in the history of Florida. So that's it. I appreciate it, Bobby.
My kids watching. I love you guys.
Yeah, we have Kenny watching. And I believe Mark has been there, and of course other guys as well that have known you. Hurley was there as well. So
I watch them on Facebook, and I'm so proud of them all.
Good. All right, Bobby, we'll cut you loose because you're gonna die. I'm gonna die soon too. Thank you so much for your time.
Have a great holiday, bud. Thank you for allowing me to do this. It meant a lot.
All right. Well, we'll try to get you back maybe down the road to finish the rest of the story. But check out this book. It's fascinating, and check out his YouTube as well. And then you have Miranda saying goodbye as well. So,
see you, Miranda. Talk soon.
All right, Bobby. Take care. All right, there he is, Bobby Blair. That was a good interview. I mean, you got to read the book if you really want to learn about his path. It's I just got an alert that I have low battery. Anyway, so I'm gonna go because my battery will die. I had a great time with Bobby Blair. This is a great story in the book. We'd love to see Bobby Blair again. He had an amazing academy with great players from the mid-'90s. They were all a little bit older than me. The Wasserman, Adcock, Rodrigo Gomez, Urbanacek, Hurley, Braswell guys. But I always remember seeing that crew when I was 15 and they were 18 through those designateds. And I was intrigued to see what this was all about, and I learned a lot about it tonight. Next interview is with Bob Gomez, another guy who had himself a nice crew down. Andres Pedroso, he had DeMesa at times, he had Hoffman, he had Melissa Applebaum, Josh Tarkoff, several guys. So thank you so much for joining tonight. A very good crowd. Kenny, I appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words. Billy, as always. Ken Herman here.